Are we ready to begin? All right. All right. Um, Good afternoon and welcome to FL Stanton's Go Team meeting where good good evening. Welcome to FL Stanton's Go Team meeting where we will follow the agenda as it has been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I am pleased to call this meeting of the FL Stanton Go Team to order. Our first order of business is to call roll and review our norms. The secretary will now take the roll.
Okay, Dr. McIntyre,
Present.
okay. Mrs. Lumumba,
Stop. Sorry for the dogs.
no problem. Tiffany Coleman,
Present.
okay. Ashley Herbert,
Present.
Jessica Tucker,
Present.
Alma Hall,
Present.
and of course myself. 6 people available. A quorum is there.
All right. We may now proceed with our agenda. Our first action item, our first order of business is to approve the agenda. This was provided to you and there are copies on the website as well. Are there any changes to the agenda? May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
A second?
Second.
You got that, Ms. Powell?
Ashley and Miss Hall. Mhm.
All right. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye,
Aye.
Jessica Tucker.
Hi, Stephanie Powell.
I, Ashley Herbert.
Hi, Tiffany Coleman. Sorry.
Hi, Alma Hall.
All right. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? All right. We will review and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. The minutes were provided to you. Are there any corrections?
You know, Ms. Tucker, I never get the minutes. I never get the agenda or the minutes. I got the agenda this time. I didn't get the minutes.
Miss Hall, are you checking the invitation that's sent out to you?
Yes,
Because it
ma'am.
was so the email address that you provided to the Go team, I use that email address and I send out an invite and we put all of the documents there when we do the invite.
The only thing I had on the invite was the agenda and the PowerPoint.
Okay. I'll have to start sending it to you individually because I don't know why it's not attaching for you in the invite, Miss Alma. I apologize for that.
I'm sorry, I got all kinds of things going on in my house right now. That's the phone. I'm gonna mute.
Yes, ma'am. So I will attach them to you and send them to you in the chat right now, as a matter of fact. Does anybody else have any corrections to the minutes? All right. I'm getting ready to send them to you now. It's Alma. Hold on. All right, check the chat, ma'am. And I'll give you a second to look at that. All right, are there any corrections to the minute?
No, I didn't see any corrections to be made.
Yes,
either.
ma'am. Can I get a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
I approve of the motion.
A second?
Second,
All in favor, please say aye. Aye, Jessica Tucker.
aye, Alma Hall.
Ms. Coleman and Ms. Herbert, are you aye?
I, Ashley Herbert.
I'm sorry. I'm driving this big old van right now, so it's difficult to unmute, but I'm here.
Yes,
I'm good.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I apologize. Please be safe.
Okay, just try not to crash my uncle's van. But I'm
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
Okay.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? All right, we will keep this agenda moving. We are at the point where we are doing the final budget recommendations approval. It's in your hands, Dr. McIntyre.
Second, so I can share my screen. Okay. Can you all see? Okay. All right, so this is the agenda. As the agenda was just approved. Our norms. Just let me move this out of the way. All right, this is a meeting of the GO team. Only members of the team may participate in the discussion. Any members of the public present are here to quietly observe. We will follow the agenda as noticed to the public and stay on task. and we invite and welcome contributions of every member and listen to each other. And we will respect all ideas and assume good intentions. So we are finally at the end of this process. So we are at step 8, the Go Team budget finalization meeting. And all budgets will be approved by the 14th from the Go Team. So we will take action today. The budget finalization meetings, during this meeting, we will review all components of the budget. We should be updated on any feedback from the cluster superintendent and key leaders. And then after that, we will take action via a vote. Principals will present the final budget recommendations for Go Team approval, and all approval meetings must be held after staffing conferences. So the staffing conference was last Monday, and then budgets must be approved by the 14th, which is next week. So budget updates. We don't have a lot of updates, but we do have some. I am pleased to announce that there were changes made to the draft budget that we discussed at our last meeting. These changes reflect an allocation of $65,250. And the changes are detailed on the next slide. So we were able to add money. And the additional money was received from Title I funds. So because our enrollment increased by roughly about to increase to roughly 214 students, what was not included in our original budget were the Title I assigned funds for those students. So after going back, the Federal Programs Office was able to add additional funds for the additional students that we are having. So we were able to use those funds to add back a paraprofessional position. So we were abolishing, I believe, 5 positions. We were able to add back 4 positions. We were able to add back 1, so it's only 3 now. But we also added $2,500 for media supplies and an additional $5,151 for stipends. The security grant funds. So what was included in our budget was $45,000 for security to be used for safety and security. Because our building is a newly renovated building, we don't really have a whole lot of additional security needs. However, we still had to specifically assign those security grant funds to be spent somewhere. So we chose to have a school clerk position transition to be a non-instructional security aide. And that was kind of an even swap. That left us with $108 from that grant. And so we will use that for some type of equipment. Hopefully we can get some more lights around the school. So by function, this is now the new proposed budget by function. So the money that's being used for instruction. So 27 FTEs are directed towards instruction. Then you see pupil services, which are like instructional support, improvement of instructional services, instructional staff, training. We did not make any assignments for those. Educational media services. That's a 1 FTE. School administration, 3 FTEs, maintenance and operations, 4, and then we don't have anything for transportation. But that's how the budget breaks out. And this is what it looks like by function, to see how those percentages look. So our goal is to spend a majority of our money on instruction. And if you take a look at instruction and pupil services, and improvement of instructional services, that is the bulk of our money. I do want to, because we didn't make any other changes, there were not any additional slides to discuss. I mean, excuse me, to include. But I do want to open this up for discussion and any questions around the new funds that were allocated and the ways in which those were used to support staffing and supplies.
I have a question. Um, I just wanted to understand about the swapping the clerk for a non-instructional security. What does that exactly mean?
Yes. So the job description for that security aid can include someone to monitor the front desk and to monitor the doors, to monitor the visitors that come in, ensure that all visitors are tracked and that we're utilizing the systems and processes that are put in place, um, to help manage what happens as far as security around the building. So checking the might include checking the parking lot. It might include walking around the building. So we currently have a clerk, and the clerk's primary positioning was at the front desk, doing some of those, almost all of those same responsibilities. So that seemed like a good position to swap for that.
So we're not, so it's just essentially changing the job title.
Yes.
Okay.
But it is a new position. So an abolishment of the clerk position and the adding of the new aide position.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? So I will say we were glad to get this additional fund so that we were able to keep one additional pair of positions. So that was a good thing. So the Go team now needs to take action to vote on this FY26 budget. So after the motion and second, the Go team may have additional discussion, but once the discussion is concluded, the Go team will vote.
Are there any further questions for Dr. McIntyre before we move along our agenda? All right. So, thank you, Principal McIntyre, for sharing this information. I will now entertain a motion to approve this budget.
I, Ashley Herbert, motion to approve the budget.
A second.
I, Alma Hall, second.
You got it, Ms. Powell?
Got it.
Yes, ma'am. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, Jessica Tucker. Please identify yourself.
I, Alma Hall.
I, Stephanie Powell.
I, Ashley
I'm a
Herbert.
I'm Malika Lumumba.
All right.
I,
Oh,
Tiffany Coleman.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Coleman. I apologize.
It's all right. Sorry. It's okay. I was trying to get there.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion carried. Our budget has been approved. Yay. We will continue with our next item. Dr. McIntyre, your principal's report, followed by Ms. Coleman, your report, and any committee reports.
So I wanted to share our right score results. So just to give you some background, right score is a district provided writing assessment, and we usually use that to score second through fifth graders. So I wanted to include third, fourth, and fifth grade, as they will also be taking the Georgia milestones. However, the third grade results have not come back yet. We do have fourth and fifth grade results that we want to share, both the November assessment as well as the February assessment. So the November results that I'm going to show you is for informational writing, and the February results are for opinion writing. Please note that writing does continue to be a challenge. That is why it is one of our strategic priorities, to be able to implement a strategic writing program. So we have pulled together some school-wide strategies to work with. They were not necessarily in place in November, and more so in place in February. However, it is still two different types of writing, so I do want to make you aware. And so if you'll take a look there, I'm going to show you two slides for each. So I'll show you the essay. The essay is usually a writing prompt that in which students normally have two passages in which they are to read. And from those two passages, they ask a question for them to write an essay. And they provide them with, the assessment provides them with a checklist to make sure that they have all the components that would give them a proficient score. So for our writing results for fourth grade, for this informational that was taken in November, so you'll take a look at the raw score. So 7 is the possible raw score. And you see we were at 0.56 for that score. And that 7 is broken out into two categories. Idea development, organization, and coherence, and language usage and conventions. And so out of a possibility of 4, we have 0.4, and out of a possibility of 3, we have 0.16. So with this first administration in November and for the informational writing, all of our students at the time scored below average that participate in the assessment. If you'll look at the pie graph that's on the left-hand side, that's a breakdown of how students scored, like how many students scored 1 through 7, or excuse me, 0 through 7. So in November, we had 15 students to score 0, 7 students to score 1, 2 students to score 2, and 1 student to score a 3. Our issue and tendency most of the time that when students are scoring a 1 is because they just essentially copied the text. So they may have read both passages, they may have taken information for both passages, but they weren't able to read the passage and put it into their own words. They just copied what was in either one of the texts. So that yields a 0. So that was our essay score for informational in November. And this was our essay score for opinion writing in February. As you can see, there has been some improvement in the overall raw score. We still have a long way to go, but making tremendous improvement. So 1.64 out of the raw score of 7. And the breakdown for the pie graph is 5 students scored 0, 12 students scored 1, 4 students a 2, 2 students a 3, and 5 students a 4. So we actually had students to score 4 for in February. So as you can see, all the students were not in below average in February. We're moving students to the right, which is what we want to do. The second part of the assessment is where they answer comprehension questions. So they still have to read the text, and then they answer usually 3 comprehension questions, and then they write a constructed response, which essentially is a question, and they just answer the question, which is usually no more than a paragraph, but they still have to use both texts in order to be able to effectively answer the question. So you'll see the breakdown here of how the students scored for this in November. So in November, the text was informational that they were using. And for that, the scores, we had 15 students to score a 0, 7 students to score a 1, 2 students to score a 2, and 1 student to score a 3.
I'm sorry, could you go back again? How many students scored 0?
15.
Am I looking at the wrong chart? Okay, I'm looking at the pie.
Pie. Yes, looking at the pie.
And then I'm looking at the scale or the legend.
No, these are the scores for the different part. So there are 2 parts. One is the comprehension question and one is the writing.
Okay. Okay.
Then in February, the scores for the constructed response were 3 students at 0, 12 students at 1, 8 students at 2, 3 students at 3, and 2 students at 4. And now move to 5th grade. So 5th grade November, the right score results. This is also for the informational in November. So out of a raw score of 7, we were at 1.69. And the breakdown of the scores for the essay were 6 students at 0, 14 students at 1, 6 students at 2, 4 scoring a 3, 4 scoring a 4, and 1 scoring a 5. And then, okay, yes. And then the February essay, there were improvements that were made. Again, we're at 2.26 out of 7. With 2 students scoring 0, 10 students scoring 1, 11 students scoring 2, 10 students scoring a 3, 4 students a 4, and 2 students a 5. So what we are seeing both 4th and 5th grade in the essays is that we are having more students to move and score higher. So we're having less students scoring 0. So our issue is, like I said, was copying So getting students to read, comprehend, and understand what the text is saying, and then to be able to put it into their own words to then be able to either write the constructed response or the essay. We were also, I'll get to that in just a moment. I'll say that in a minute. For the constructed response and comprehension questions, this is the breakdown for part one in November. And this is the breakdown in February. I'll give it a second. And then this is the breakdown in February. Again, we are moving more students away from 0 and 1. We need them to be scoring actually 4 and higher, but for sure 3 and higher. So we're moving more and more students over to 2s and 3s to get them closer to where they need to be. So some specific strategies that we've implemented between November and February have been to provide some explicit instruction on first understanding the prompt. So we also had some difficulty that they didn't know when to write the paragraph for the constructed response versus when to write the essay. So what the difference was between the essay and the paragraph for the constructed response. So we're doing some explicit instruction around that. And once they understand the prompt, then to have some planning tools. So we've been using some graphic organizers, we've been using some mnemonic devices. When you are writing opinion, this is the strategy you use. When you're doing informational, this is the strategy you use. When we're writing narrative, we use a different strategy. So just giving them some mnemonic devices to remember, HOP for opinion, HIP for informational, SCRAPS for narrative, just to be able to give them some planning devices. And then also providing them with the checklist. So they have the checklist on the assessment, but knowing how to use the checklist. So now, how do you take the checklist at the beginning of your writing to make sure that you've included all the parts? And then once you're done, go back and use a checklist. Did you really do all the things that are here so that we can get them to proficiency? So that instruction is being provided. So we have specific time for writing in our schedule, but we've also included some additional time in these last couple of months as we move forward and get closer to testing to have writing clinics. So we're doing writing clinics twice a week with all third, fourth, and fifth grade. Where they come in, they've done a cold write in their classroom, and then we have some instruction that's being provided in the clinic and also conferencing. So because we have all the students in there at the same time with all the teachers on the grade level, as well as the literacy coaches, we're able to divide kids up into smaller groups to have conferences with them. So you've had your writing, you have your planning tool, you have your checklist, you've actually written something. So now let's take a look at what you've written. Let's give you some feedback. And we're able to do one-on-one feedback in those clinics. And then they go back, revise, and bring their final draft back. We're also trying to build writing stamina. So what we were also finding was that when they have 30 minutes or 45 minutes to just write, they take about 5 minutes to just write. And there's no planning involved. There's no going back. So really trying to help them break apart that writing time and to be able to utilize all of the time. So if you're going through that entire process, that process will take all of that time. So having them to focus on how to use that time and build their writing stamina. So it to move them from taking a week or 2 weeks to produce a writing sample to, okay, you have 45 minutes now to go through that entire process and produce a writing sample. So we're trying to build the stamina in that way. So that's all I have, Ms. Tucker.
Yes, ma'am. Please keep that up for a second. So please declare your candidacy by March 7th. Thank you.
We are actually in the green. I spoke with the Go Team office today, and we have a candidate for each of the categories.
Yay. Okay.
So we are good.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say you're only doing your writing workshop with your third, fourth, and fifth graders, but you said the second grade is also taking this test, correct?
So the explicit writing instruction goes across all grade levels. It's K-5. The writing clinics are only happening for 3 through 5 in preparation for milestones.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions for Dr. McIntyre? All right. Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. Ms. Coleman, are you ready for your report, ma'am?
I'm fine. Mute. Can I have 30 seconds to make this turn? I'm sorry, y'all. My
So
uncle
let's
is
switch,
paralyzed.
and let Ms. Herbert do her report for the committee.
That'll be perfect. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ms.
Thank
Herbert.
you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So the student ambassadors in the community have decided on the following uniform attire, which would be blue or tan khakis, yellow, white, or navy blue polos, and by March 16th, the form of communication will be sent out to the community to inform them about the updated uniforms for the 2025-2026 school year. Oh, and also after the form of communication, the student ambassadors will also be given uniforms so they can actually wear to school so the other students can actually see what the preview would be. And that's all.
Oh, I love that. Any questions for Ms. Herbert? All right, Ms. Coleman, you ready?
Yes.
Hold it, Miss Tucker.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the team need to vote for uniforms?
That, from my understanding, that was not an action item. We already voted on.
To do it?
Yes, we already voted to do it. It was just the student ambassadors were determining what the actual uniforms would be. But we already voted that we would have the uniforms.
Understood. Miss Herbert, will you tell me one more time when the communication is supposed to go out?
Absolutely. It has to go out by March 16th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ms. Coleman.
Okay, here we go. I had to find unmute. Okay. So we started off our cluster meeting in our small groups. Each area has their own small groups first. And we just talked about whether or not we were on track each school was on track to complete their literature and attendance goals. And we determined that we're making progress to complete each goal, but I mean, it's mid-school year, so can't quite call it complete. We had a big discussion about attendance, daily attendance being down, chronic absences being improved. We're being more more strategic, excuse me, in dealing with attendance. And there was a suggestion to look into specific families that may have children in multiple schools who may be, pulling on attendance. Maybe where one family has kids in middle school, high school, and elementary that may not be coming to school and pulling attendance down. Um, some ideas were tossed around to get those chronically absent families back on track. We then went to a major, all group. We came out of our small groups and back to the major group, and Superintendent Johnson joined it, and he was still talking about the budget and what the district is doing to fix the deficit that the district is in. Um, they're still ironing out the budget issues. Um, there was a discussion about the 11% increase that the teachers received as a raise, how that caused some of the deficit that we're in, and some of the other initiatives that all rolled out at the same time that played a major part in our now being in debt. The central office has reduced like 57 positions, I believe you said, and that saved about 7 million, but they're still ironing out more reductions to come from the district. Um, they're going to, they said, what did I say? So Superintendent Johnson says they're going to be some discomfort with the budgets until we get back to the budget gets back to what it needs to be. That's just what it is. So it was tossed around between some principals that spoke up that maybe some of the high school programs were more shortchanged than some of the elementary programs. And Superintendent Johnson just said, hey, it's just going to be uncomfortable until we get the money back into the budget that we need. Um, uh, that went on for a while. Then we went and did some other small group talks. The meeting ended with the facilities report, and the facilities report should now include pre-K in our numbers for those that have pre-K programs. Include the head count of pre-K in attendance, and that factor into how many kids are in the school and factor into the budgets. Um, and there's a potential for some school closures due to low occupancy in 2020, in the year 2026. Um, most of our cluster, which is the Douglas cluster, most of our cluster was being reported as being under occupancy. So there is some talk about our charter schools being closed down just because they don't have enough kids in attendance. There was some debate about the charts not adding up from the last meeting to this meeting, and that conversation continued into the email, but I won't lie to you, I got lost. They're not always speaking for the parents to understand. A lot of these are teachers that know acronyms that I did not know. So I cannot report on anything outside of the meeting where I was able to ask questions and get people to explain to me what certain acronyms meant. But that's the gist of it. Most of it was complaining about budgets, and the superintendent suspects that the budgets will be tight for about 2 years or so. That's my report.
Thank you so much, Ms. Coleman. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Coleman? All right. Thank you again, Ms. Coleman. We are now, we don't have, we did not have anybody that signed up for public comment for this meeting. So do we have any announcements, Dr. McIntyre?
This week is College and Career Week. It is also Social Worker Week. And it is also Read Cross America Week. So we have a lot going on this particular week. And I will go ahead and make the announcement that we will have a teacher planning day on March the 17th. And then the following week after that, we will have our last administration, our spring administration of the MAP assessment and the MAP fluency, MAP growth and MAP fluency. Between that time and then Georgia milestones will be that last week of April, first week of May. So in the meantime, between now and then, we started today our taste tutorial. So we are getting students are getting a double dose of reading or literacy, I should say, because it includes reading and writing, literacy, math, and for our fifth grade science, in preparation for Georgia milestones. So that tutorial will be 2 days a week in the afternoons on Wednesdays and Thursdays, up until we prepare to take the milestones.
Any questions for Dr. McIntyre about the announcements? Are there any other announcements? Ms. Judy was unable to attend this meeting. She is currently doing training for Camp Jenny, so we will be receiving information towards Camp Jenny in the very near future.
Ms. Tucker, I do want to say that just want to make sure everyone was aware. So the first part of the presentation that I sent to everyone is the budget finalization. So that's all the changes and updates that were made since our last budget allocation meeting. However, and feedback meeting. However, the presentation from the feedback meeting is included at the end of that. So if you look at the latter part of the presentation, it's like an appendix. I did include the presentation from last meeting so that you have something to reference, to be able to go back so that so that you don't have to jump back and forth between presentations, so you can see it all there.
Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. We have reached the end of our agenda. Is there any additional business at this time? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I, Ashley Herbert, motion to adjourn the meeting.
A
I
second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye, Jessica Tucker.
Hi, Alma Hall.
I, Ashley
I,
Herbert.
Malika Lumumba.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Meeting is officially adjourned. Have a good